So I'll get started anyway. More people will pop on, but this is recording anyway. So just for the sake of the recording. By the way, if you guys have any questions about anything, that would really help me out because everyone is coming at this kind of from different angles. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to fill out that quick little survey with the 3 questions on it. That helps give me an idea of where everyone's coming from. Because ultimately I've got a plan that I wanted to go over for freeing up time through living with a more fulfilling timeline. I've got a plan to go over that. But if it would help me direct more specific to you guys if you had any questions at all. So far from the sounds of it, what I've gathered is it seems like the biggest time wasters people have are mostly social media is a lot of it. So I'm like, well, that's okay. That's fun because that's a pretty easy fix, right? So we could spend a little bit of time on that. I mean, no, it's a simple fix. It's not an easy fix. Hey, Lori, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good. I was going to ask you, a couple people jumped into the group last minute in the last hour. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I didn't get it. They're not on my, they're not friends with me on Facebook, so I couldn't find them. So I don't know if you know who they were, if you send out some invites or not.
I think there's just Anna and Deb that I know of offhand. Do those names ring a bell?
Well, Deb, I think I already put Deb on. But Anna, I think she might have come in last minute. If you can just tag her in maybe the last video, okay. Or the live video that's going on now, just so she sees it. Because I didn't get a chance to get her email, so I didn't email her out the information.
Okay.
Hey, Lacey, thanks for coming as well. So I was just saying that if you have any questions at all, feel free to jump in. The more information I get from you guys and what you're looking to accomplish from this, the way the more specific I can give you more specific feedback. But otherwise, I'll just kind of keep it. I'll keep going with my regular plan. The biggest thing is that the commonality I saw for a lot of people was social media scrolling. That tends to waste a lot of time, right? And what people would like to do with their time, a couple people said that they'd like to write a book or finish a book. And a couple people said they'd like to take more vacations, do a retreat. Other Lori said she just said retreat. So I don't know if that she means she wants to host retreats or she wants to do retreats or she just wants to retreat from everything. Either way, they're all valid and we can definitely work on that. But I think that the first part, when it comes to social media, right, is the attitude and the realization of how you treat your time. And it's the same thing for people. If you find yourself busy and you're getting pulled in different directions from people that don't appreciate your time, a lot of people say that oh, I can't keep up. Everyone always needs something, right? And it seems like they don't appreciate my time. Well, the funny thing is if you don't appreciate your time, you can't expect other people to appreciate your time. So if you don't put a value on your free time, then you can't expect others to put a value on your free time either, right? So a big part of this is understanding the value of your time. Now most people have their set value of their time. So whatever they make per hour, 20, 30, 40, $50 an hour, whatever it is, that's kind of their value, right? And they only think of that value when they're working, right? But they don't think about it after work. So, you got to think about that when you're sitting scrolling social media for endless amount of time, well, whatever amount you would make at work. So say if you're making $30 an hour at work, you got to think of it as you're, charging yourself $30 to sit for an hour and scroll on social media, right? And when you think of it like that, it can change things a little bit for you, right? I don't know if that makes sense so far. By the way, I am going to use this as a course later. but I will exclude any video footage that's not mine. Okay. So if you guys do want to ask a question, go ahead. If I could see your face, that'd be cool. But I understand if not, if you just got home from work and you want to just like pour a glass of wine and sit back and not worry about being seen, that's fine too. I appreciate it. I can understand that. But just so you know, any visual recording, I'm not going to put on so people, if they're watching the recording, they'll hear your voice, but they won't see your picture. Okay. So if you do have a question too, it would be good to see you so I can understand more where you're coming from. All right. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I like to start with. Think about that. Like what is your time worth? You might have heard this before when it comes to social media, that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, right? So when you're on social media and you're scrolling, like there's a reason Facebook wants you to do that, because they're generating an income off you, right? Any service you're not paying for, you are the service, right? They want your eyeballs on it because you're constantly feeding information into their algorithms, what they want to know about you, not you specifically, but the trend, your demographic, your age group, your gender, all those things are fed into the system. And that's very valuable to people that are going to advertise on that medium. So they want you on that as long as you can. So when you could be doing something valuable and your time is more or less, you think it's worth more than $30 an hour, but let's say that's what you're trading your time with at work, right? You got to think of, you're giving that amount of money to Facebook to put your consciousness into that platform so they can gather it. That might sound a little bit trippy, right? But you've got to think of that way. You got to start valuing your time, right? And I made that one live about that. Like if someone asks you for your time, if someone says, "Hey, can I bother you?" Well, you got to think, if your time is worth $30 an hour and that person is going to take 15 minutes or half an hour of your time, that's $15. If you're not ready to go and take $15 out of your wallet and give it to that person, then you should definitely think twice about giving that person a half hour of your time, right? Now that might seem cold and calculating a little bit. Like I'm not saying you would do that for your family or your friends, but if you have a client that is not your favorite client and they're constantly, just giving you too much information, you have to set up a little bit of a boundary there, right? So I hope that's helpful for starters. Now, once you've got that, and even if you're not even working currently employed, you still got to put that value in your time just to help you think about how to value that time. And this is going to end up, like, you might be thinking like, well, why are we talking about this? Like, I wanted to get more free time. I'm not talking about getting more paid for my time. Well, they're the same, right? Because you have to generate enough income to survive one way or another. Okay. And if you want more free time and you need to make the same amount of money, well, then you need to work less hours, right? So if you want to work less and more free time, then you have to make your time more valuable. And you can do that. Well, no, you don't understand my job. People say, my job is set. I can't really, I already got a raise this year. That's it. Well, that's one limited way of thinking. There's lots of stuff you can do, right? Even outside your job or even in your job. Or if you're self-employed, especially, there's no ceiling that you have like you do if you were like a regular wage earning person, right? But the process of increasing your value, you have to start to understand the 80-20 principle. So who's heard of that before? The 80-20 principle. And if you're just watching, you can even hit your little hand there. Go down to your reaction on your screen if you see it, and put your little handy hand up. See, like that. Raise your hand. See, like that? There you go. Okay. If you've heard me say that before, just put your hand up or clap or make some kind of thingy if you've heard the 80-20 principle. Okay. And if not, I'm going to go through it anyway, because it's something we got to rehear again and again and again. Okay. So the you got a lot of claps and everything. Okay, great. The 80-20 principle. All right. The best analogy that I've heard for this is a racehorse. Okay. When a racehorse wins a race, the racehorse's earnings is not proportionate to how much they won the race by, right? So the first place horse can win by a nose, right? But it will make substantially more winnings than the second place horse, right? Much more. Okay. Well, it wasn't in the lead by that much more. It only needed to have that leading edge in order to earn substantially more. That's one way of thinking about the 80-20 principle. In every industry, whether you're in whatever industry you're in, it's always the same. Whether you're in sales, you're in marketing, you're in multi-level marketing, whatever it is, there's always that trend of the top 20% who pull in 80% of the sales, right? And that's commonly where people see that, they notice that, right? And then they also notice that it's not a simple 80-20 split, okay? It's a curve. Let me see how my writing will go here. Bear with me for a sec. Line. Again, this is a good time to ask any questions if you have them too, while I'm doodling. Doodling, doodling, doodling away. Don't be afraid to ask a question. Just going to keep on doodling. Doodling, doodling. Okay, no questions? So the curve goes like this. Okay, something like that. All right. So if we sketch this out, this would be the 80-20 mark right here. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. It also goes to a 95-5 and then a 99-1. Okay, so what this means is that if this is 0 to 100%, okay, if this is the last 20 and you were to take this 20 and make a new graph with it, it would be the same for that higher 20. And then if you took that and then made a new graph of that 20, then you would get another, sorry, I know my drawing's getting atrocious, another 80-20, all right? So this would be like the 95-5, and then this would be the 99-1, okay? So the 80-20 principle is a lot more elastic than people give it credit for, okay? And this is like, I'm not making this up. This has been, I've studied this from a consultant named Perry Marshall, who actually figured it out, and he was working for NASA applying this, right? Because it was the same thing in all of their work efficiency. So their job was to find out what 20% of their activity was the most efficient, bringing most of the result, 80% of the result, okay? Now there's a flip side of this. And if you guys are in sales or in any kind of customer service, you'll recognize this, that there's also a negative to it, which means that 20% of your headache customers will bring you 80% of your headaches, right? Of your problems. The headaches when you have a client base, the headaches are not equally distributed, right? They're distributed 80% in 20% of your clientele. Okay. Is this making sense so far? Okay. So again, and if this is all new, just, I can slow down a little bit or I can answer questions. Okay. Love it so far? Heart, nod. Okay, good. So with your time, it's the same thing, right? 80% of the result that you need to get. And I'm not talking about merely financial. I'm talking about everything. Okay. Building relationships. All right. Yes. Earning, keeping things tidy and organized. 20% of your activity will bring 80% of that result. And then the other 80% of the activity is wasted. So the first step is kind of learning that. And then the next step is reframing your attitude about it. Okay. About your value. Okay. Because you can't just you have to work backwards once you understand that and look at how much time do you want to have and how much you need to make to supplement that free time. Okay, but it all starts with putting a value on. Okay, so for example, I'll do a little more math, and if it's confusing for you, make sure you ask me some questions. All right. So you guys give me an example. What is a goal? What's a financial goal that you'd like to make per year? Someone throw out a number.
75,000.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So we got our number, 75,000. Okay, good. So whatever it is, we have to work backwards. Okay, so 75,000 divided by, and we're going to work, say we're going to work 50. How many weeks of the year are you going to work? Lacey, 48. You're going to take a month off. You're going to take 2 weeks off. You're going to take no weeks off.
I'd love to take a month off.
Okay, a month off. So that means you're going to be working 48 weeks, right? So we got to take 75,000 divided by 48 weeks. Okay, so that's 1562. Okay, and now how many hours a week do you want to work?
20.
20. Okay, so that means that we need to make $78 per hour. Okay. Now, if right now you're making 75 and you're happy with that, but then you want to cut your work in half, well, then there's only a pretty simple way to do it is you got to double the value of your time. Okay, which is doable, right? Now the intricacies of that are like there's a little more to it than that, but it's definitely doable. Okay, and that's part of what I want to focus on. So, and by the way, like full transparency, I wanted to mention this. Okay, I meant to mention it earlier, but I got into it. I love doing this. This is my ideal Friday. Like I love nothing more than teaching people just like this. I love teaching people on the floor, but I love teaching them this way as well. Okay, and getting into some of a longer conversation about self-cultivation and efficiency and things like that. So it is my dream to do this every Friday. So the next little foreseeable future, I'm running a 6-week course on how to do this stuff to get more in depth and how to apply it in your life. So kind of full disclosure, I am running a course that I'm offering you guys if you want to do it. Okay, the course is 6 weeks. It's around this time. It's got some homework and it's every Friday for the next 6 weeks. The course is $597. So just putting that out there now, so I don't have to bug you for it later. Okay, you can ask about it later if you want to, but I'm throwing that out there now. But anyway, so if this is where you're at, then you need to create more value in your time, which again is doable. Even if you are, if you're employed by someone else, if they're not paying you enough, then you have to find a way to either supplement that, right? Okay, let me go back to my thing here. Where did you go? So we have to work backwards. So now if you want your time to be worth that much money, then you can't be doing anything else that's less than that unless you really, really, really want to. Okay. Now this is the hard part, and this is something you should write down. All right. And this is going to be hard cheese to swallow for a while. Write this down. Never do anything that you can pay someone else to do cheaper and better than you can. That's from one of my mentors, Stephen Oliver, taught me that. And it's always been in my head ever since. Never do something that you can pay someone else to do cheaper and better than you can, unless you really love to do it. Okay. And when I got this through my head, the first thing that I did, and I wasn't making a lot of money at the time, but it just clicked in my head, is I started paying someone else to cut my lawn. And it was one of the greatest things I ever did, because the one thing I hate to do is I hate cutting my lawn. Now, some people love cutting their lawn. And if you love cutting your lawn, then by all means, keep cutting it. But for me, I hate it because I'm pushing the lawnmower and I don't like it. And I usually, because I didn't like it, I would let my grass get long. So while I'm cutting it, I'm like cursing at my neighbors who are probably judging me for having a long lawn. So the whole experience is horrible, not only because I don't like it, but there's a whole emotional thing that I'm looking around and like, are people looking at me like shifty eyed, like, oh yeah, he's finally cutting his lawn. Geez, thank goodness, Rob, way to go. Way to, leave it so long. And all that emotional baggage that was going on with it was like, was just driving me nuts. I hate doing this. Why am I doing this? Now, so think about one thing that you don't like to do. Okay. And then what will happen is if you really take this advice and you push it, you're like, you know what, I'm going to sit on my butt and I'm going to watch someone cut my lawn. Okay. The next part will happen is you'll feel a little bit guilty because you're like, I could be doing this. I'm paying for this. Okay. And that's fine. But now what are you going to do with that time? If your goal is to make $78 an hour and then you're paying someone $38 an hour to $20 an hour to cut your lawn, right? Well, then there's a little bit of pressure there to do something more valuable with that time. So what's something more valuable you could do with that hour instead of cutting your lawn?
Teaching a class.
Teaching a class. Good. Good.
Creating content.
Sorry, say that again, Holly.
Creating content.
Creating content. Yeah, exactly. Because no one else can do that. No one else can create your content for you, right? But then now you've also got pressure to make that content good. And now you're really going to do it, right? There's a little more pressure than just staring at the blank screen and saying, I can't do this. I can't think of anything. And then flipping over to Facebook and then scrolling, right?
Well, if you have to do, like, your lawn's long and you got to create content, it takes away from your content focus because you're still feeling the lawn pressure, as an example.
Yeah, exactly. Read a book. Read a book is a good one too. Yeah. Reading is depending on what you're reading, but for me, reading has been a very big, like, transformation, right? Because I either read or I use a lot of audiobook credits all the time. Because if I drive a lot, when I was training in Scarborough, right, my teacher, when I was training Kung Fu, I spent over 12 years driving to Scarborough and back to learn. And all of that time was university in my car, right? Which is the bulk of where I learned all of the leadership, all of the marketing, all of the stuff was just constant. And that was time that was, for me, was well spent, as, instead of just listening to the radio or whatever. Right. And at least you're nodding along. Yeah. Because you've been really good at, every time I give you a suggestion, you're like, ooh, good, I got a credit for that. And then you go ahead and you listen to it.
I have a credit and I need a recommendation.
Okay. I'll remind me again. I have a couple lined up for you that I'll give you. Okay. But anyway, there's a story here that I was reading again, a book. I was reading a book by a guy that was teaching consulting book. And it really bugged me because I'm a big fan of W. Clement Stone. Right, W. Clement Stone. Do everyone know who Jack what's his name? Jack, the guy who co-wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. You could probably
Jack Canfield.
Canfield, yeah, thank you. Jack Canfield. Well, Jack Canfield, one of his early mentors was W. Clement Stone. And W. Clement Stone was this, ended up being a major mogul for the insurance business, but he was in sales and his whole thing was power of positive thinking. And he trained a ton of people on, getting up early in the morning and getting energized and going out and making a positive impact and all that stuff. And his name is just legendary in those circles now, and he's since passed away. But the author of this book, who worked for him at the time, and they, I guess, butted heads. And the author made the point to him that, you claim all this positive thinking and everything, but it's easy for you to think positive because you're rich. And W. Clement Stone said, no, I'm rich because of the positive thinking. Like, that's what got me there. And this guy said, well, no, that's easy because no, it's not that. It's just because you got there and now you're positive. So they have this butt heads, and he ended up getting fired, and then he ended up going his own way and fine. No problem. You don't have to agree with everything he says. If everyone agreed on everything, we all wouldn't be necessary. Right. But the point is like, they have this clash where, no, I'm wealthy because I'm positive, and no, you're positive because you're wealthy. And it's such a stupid simplification of the argument. It's like the chicken or the egg, right? And it doesn't go that way. Life doesn't happen like that. Life doesn't happen where you're thinking positive and then bam, you got everything you need, right? That's absurd. It doesn't happen that way. So, like, why are these two intelligent people having this argument? The way it works, and it's the same way with valuing your time and then getting more free time. Okay, when you're building more free time, it's not something that's going to happen like that. It's a ratchet system. It's something that needs to be ratcheted up. So like in Kung Fu, we say the body follows the mind and the mind follows the body, right? So for example, if you want to be a more confident person, right? If you're not a confident person, it probably shows in your body language, right? Like this, like you're hunched over and you're nervous. So the way we teach people in our Kung Fu program and a leadership program is you change the body focus a little bit. So you sit up straight and you look people in the eye and you make a habit of that. And then what happens? Well, after a little bit of time, when you're making the habit of sitting up straight and looking people in the eye, people respond to you differently. And then because they respond to you differently, it makes you feel a little bit more confident. And then because you feel a little bit more confident, now you're going to act a little more confident. And when you're acting a little more confident and thinking you're more confident, then people are going to respond to you more confidently. And then when responding more confidently, you're going to feel more confident. You're going to think you're more confident, and your body's going to respond more confidently. And it's an upgoing, it's a spiral upward, right? And then it's the same thing downward. When people are depressed, they change their body language, and then the body language reaffirms that they're depressed. And then when people see them, they go, "Are you okay? You look depressed." And they're, "Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for reminding me. I am depressed." And then that's a downward spiral, right? Now, both of these things are, arguably within your control. It's a decision, but it's not something that's going to happen. That's why it's so silly when people say when you're depressed, "Oh, just get over it." Well, you can't. That's easy to say for you. Everything's fine for you. But for me, if I'm depressed, I can't just switch it off, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't consciously start to spiral and change the direction of that spiral and build up momentum one at a time. But it's a ratchet system. And it's the same thing with increasing your time value. And it's the same thing with freeing up your time. So when you free up your time to write good content, right? Well, then now you're working at a higher level of productivity, and you're going to be more of an author and a presenter and a speaker, and people are going to start valuing your time more. And then you're going to free up more time to do what you love. So it's not a magic pill. It's a ratchet system, right? It takes time. So sorry if there's no, there's a lot of secrets you can apply right away, but there's no magic pill that can change everything for you right away. Okay. Is that making sense so far? Okay. Any questions so far? Is there any of you guys, yeah, go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
So do we have to be paying somebody to do our menial work just to enjoy the luxury of like reading a book or creating content? Or
you don't have to, but it helps, right? As long as you're supplementing that time with something more valuable, right? But no, you absolutely don't have to. There's a lot of things that you can chuck off your plate that doesn't need to be done. Okay. So one thing I've been doing lately is I write my to-do list in the morning. Okay. And then if there's, like we've talked about before, when I finish something, I'll make sure I give it a cross and a check so that reaffirms to myself, all right, I did a task. Good job. But if you're only doing that, then you become this crazy task person who's addicted to only doing tasks without figuring out which tasks you actually should be doing and which ones you're driving yourself nuts with, right? Because yeah, you'll rewire your brain with gratification for getting all these things done, but there's a lot of that stuff you shouldn't even be doing because it's low value tasks. So what I've been doing is going through my list at the end of the day and see the stuff that I didn't do. And if that's something that I didn't really need to do, then I'm going to celebrate not doing that, because that would have not wasted, but it didn't need to get done. And I want to reaffirm to myself that I also, not only do I have a to-do list, but I have a to-don't list, right? A list of stuff that is not that important and that can either wait, or it can be delegated, or it can be completely abdicated and forgotten about, right? But like a lot of the time, I've noticed a lot of things go by and they haven't gotten done, but I've done things that I really wanted to do and enjoy, and they're of high value, and the sun still came up, right? So, having a to-do list and having a to-don't list, they're both pretty good things. I don't know where I heard that originally, a to-don't list. I heard it from someone. I liked the idea, and I kind of stuck with it. But it's been very, very helpful for me. So anyway, did I answer your question? Do you have to? Your question was, do you have to do that? Well, no, you don't have to do. You don't have to do anything, right? But you've got to set your value, and then realize what's within that value, what's not, right? So, okay, I want to talk. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead if you have more.
Yes, you answered my question, and I actually really love that.
Awesome.
And celebrating the tasks that you didn't do, because there's usually a lot of guilt wrapped around that.
Yeah, and that's like the opposite of what you want, right? It's taking that whole to-do list dopamine structure, and it's making it work against you if you're not careful. Yeah. So the social media. Okay, let's address that. So the social media, we kind of did already, right? So think about that. So now the same thing. If you've set your time value at $78 an hour, that's how much you're being charged to scroll on Facebook. Okay. So in the 6-week program, and later on in the ongoing programs that I'm running, I'm going to make a rule. Okay. That the only time you go on Facebook, and we should, we're going to do this as a fast. The only time you go on social media is when you're spending money on it or you're making money on it. All right. But if two of those things aren't happening, right, then, like I said before, you're the product. If you're not paying for the product, you're the product, right? Remember that. So by spending money, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
What are, like, by making money, what do you mean? Like, can you go on Facebook to participate in, say, like something like this?
What if that is the space you? Okay, so that's
Exactly.
a good point. Yeah. What if you nurture your clients? Okay, that's fine. But then you've got to be really careful about when you're nurturing clients and then when you're slipping over to your newsfeed. So that's what I'm saying. You've got to go in and it's got to be purposeful. So, and that's something you've got to track. So I've got to talk to 10 clients today, right? Make a list. Those are the 10 clients I got to talk to. What kind of conversation do I have to have? A nurturing conversation. How much time am I going to spend having that conversation? 2 minutes per person. Log that out and then get out. So you're right. You're building a relationship, and that's generating an income from it, right? Because you're nurturing that client relationship. Okay. Another way would be like ads. So let's say, Holly, for example, mentioned that she's generating content. Okay. She wants to generate content to a blog or a lead page or something. All right. And she wanted to run ads to that. All right. Well, then if she's going in and she's, building up those ads on Facebook, then you're spending money on that. That's fine. You're putting money into that program. Okay. And if you're also making money. So if you're in there making money off it, meaning those ads are returning some kind of revenue, which can be tracked, well, then you're making money off that. Okay. But that's it. Either money's going in or money's going out, but there's no just, attention for the sake of giving my attention for nothing, right? You're better off if, taking an hour of taking $78 and then flushing it down the toilet and then going and reading your book. I know you won't do it, but it would hurt if you did, and it would remind you that this is what the platform is for, right? It's meant to generate all of your attention into it so it can form an algorithm on how you act for your demographic, right? Which is, great. It's of service to someone. It's not an evil thing. It's of service. It's just not of service to you, right? It's of service to a company that is trying to learn how to market to you and trying to find out what you like and don't like. It's a service to them, but it's not ultimately serving you right at this moment. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so then what you're saying is these platforms and the social media is not collecting the data on who I would describe as my ideal client, because, like, I think what I'm understanding is, in other words, this is not where the affluent people hang out. This is not where they spend their time.
No, not necessarily. Okay, so you can use that to your advantage in Facebook marketing. That's what you would do. So you would let Facebook gather the information for you, and you would market to that specific person. Okay, one way or another. I mean, the level of affluence you can't really peg on Facebook, but you can by interest. Okay. So you can do that. But then again, if you're advertising to those people, you are putting money into Facebook. That's fine. Put money in, but not mindless attention in. You get the difference?
Yeah, I understand that. I think I was just trying to say, like, you're telling us like that's not where we should be spending our time, like, because they're collecting our information, right? Because we're like higher level leaders. So in wanting to market to other higher level leaders, I think I can be assumed that they're also not doing the scrolling of the social media and giving up their consciousness that way.
I don't know. I can't speak for them. I'm just speaking for you, right? To you. Yeah, exactly. I think. Does that make sense?
Something to think about, I guess.
All about being intentional on the platform. Yeah, exactly. Being intentional on the platform. That's what you're doing, right? But it's intentional time use, intentional use of your time. So like I said, if someone asks you for half an hour and you're not willing to open up your wallet and give that person that value, that much money equivalent to your time, then you should rethink about that politely, right? Politely. There's very polite ways to create boundaries. A lot of people, when they hear boundaries, they have this association with like, back off. No, I don't have time for this, that kind of stuff. Like, no. There's very, very polite ways of doing that. Okay. And the one thing that I've learned with like teaching kids, for example, right, especially boys, like when you create that boundary, people love that. Even on a subconscious level, they like to know where they stand, right? And when you politely say, and you know that you read 1, 2, 3 Magic, you've read that about parenting, right? Any parent, if you guys are parents on the call and you haven't read 1, 2, 3 Magic, you definitely got to pick up a copy of that book, right? But what I've found that whenever we've had, boys that when you set a boundary for kids 9, 10, 11, all of our female instructors, they're always amazed at this. When they finally set a boundary, all of a sudden the kids love them, right? And they can't figure out, like, I thought I was being mean. They say, I thought I was being mean, and now the kids love me. No, you created a boundary that they understand. Now they know where they can push and where they can't. But that's why kids are pushing all the time. They're trying to figure out that boundary. And when you don't give it to them because you don't want to be mean, they just keep pushing, right? Until you've presented that boundary. But we have this weird association that boundaries are mean. They're not mean. Not having boundaries are even more mean, I would think, right? But there's definitely polite ways to do it. Okay. But like I said at the beginning, if you don't value your time first, you can't expect people to value your time, right? Holly, did you have a question? No? Okay. Oh, well, she dropped off mute.
Quickly, that is very, oh no, okay.
Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to add, that is very much the same with first and boundaries.
I couldn't, sorry, I broke up a little bit there. It's the same with what? See if we can get you to try it again.
I'll try in a bit. I might be in a bad area.
Okay. Maybe it's still Rogers shaking off some of the rust from there. Anyway, okay, yeah, try again if you get a stronger signal. But yeah, those boundaries, internet has been odd. Yeah, today for sure. Yeah, we had a giant Rogers outage, which was kind of nice and peaceful. Okay, so very much the same with horses, and I was thinking about that. Yeah, exactly, horses and boundaries. So Holly works a lot with horses. If you guys don't have her on Facebook, you'll see that. But very similar. It's similar with everything, guys. So, okay. So I want to go into positioning a little bit with social media. Okay, and this has a little bit to do with getting up early, waking up early, waking up early, and getting to bed early. Those are simple things, and they also have a lot to do with 80-20 time. So if you guys read my book, you've heard this before, but again, it's worth repeating. Okay. When it comes to sleep, because everyone says, well, I need to get my sleep. And often I hear I can't sleep. We'll get to bed under a reasonable time that you can get up early. Well, I can't, right? Well, why can't you? I don't know. I just can't. Most of the time when I talk to people about why they can't sleep and I ask them, what they're doing before bed, well, they're sitting in bed and they're scrolling on their phone. And it's like, well, there's your problem right there, right? This thing, right, is feeding, when you're scrolling, it's feeding cocaine into your brain, right? Not literally, but pretty much the same thing. You're getting dopamine hit after dopamine hit, wondering why you can't sleep. It's ridiculous. So you need to position the thing like far away from you within an hour or two before bed. Like try that first before you try to take sleeping pills or drink or whatever it is that you think you need to put yourself to sleep. A lot of the times it's just that, putting that aside, because it's giving you dopamine hit after dopamine hit and it's keeping you up. And then you think you can't sleep. It's really just, I would try that first, right? That's the first thing. But what I was going to say is that 80-20 applies to sleep just as much. Not all hours of sleep are equal. They're on that 80-20 curve, just like we talked about. And the hours of sleep between 9, 10, and midnight are substantially more restorative than the hours after midnight, especially after 3 or 4 a.m., right? So it's that ratcheting system I talked about, okay? If you've got a ratchet free time, then you have to start getting to bed earlier if you can. 10 o'clock is fine. And I estimate through my experience, and you've got to experiment with this on your own, through my experience, the hours of sleep, the 2 hours before midnight, 10 and 11, those 2 hours right there are worth double the sleep I would get after. So typically, if I get myself in a relaxed state and go to sleep at 10 o'clock, I would wake up at 4 feeling like I got 8 hours of sleep, even though I got only 6 hours of sleep. Okay, even more, because those 2 hours before midnight are worth a heck of a lot more. Plus also that once the sun comes up, you're not getting that same sleep. Even if you've got blackout curtains, your biology is not wired that way, right? The sun might come through, you might hear birds, you might hear traffic, whatever. The sleep is not going to be as deep after 5, 6, 7 a.m. So that is the first kind of quick hack. So if you get nothing else from this masterclass, try to implement that right away, okay? The other part to that is once you get that, once you ratchet that leg up and you get to bed a little bit earlier, 10 or 11, and you're not on social media and you're sleeping deeper, okay, you're able to wake up earlier. This is the next part, because if you're creating content, like Holly said, if you need to do that, if you need to think creatively, if you need creative solutions, if you need to write, if you need to meditate, whatever it is you got to do, the hours in between, say, 5 and 8 a.m., just like sleeping, are not equal, okay? An hour of work at 6 a.m. is not equal to an hour of work at 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. They're vastly different, right? Why are they vastly different? Any ideas? Someone who cheated and already read the book. Fresh brain, that's a part of it, yep. But also the distractions, right? Because of the myth of multitasking. Multitasking is junk. It's a lie, right? The only multitasking you can do is like when you're listening to a book and folding laundry. That's pretty much it, right? Everything else is a lie. You're not multitasking. If people say they're multitasking, what they're doing is they're quickly switching from one task to the next, right? Which means they're skimming across the surface of a whole bunch of different activity without actually having depth in any one singular activity, right? So if you want to, be more present, you can't be switching back and forth, right? And what happens when you're trying to do something creatively at 2 p.m., something dings on Facebook, something goes on email, someone calls you, someone texts you. And every time that happens, it takes another 5 minutes to get you back into that deep state of mind where you were trying to consciously create something and focus. That won't happen at 6 a.m., right? So you'll find if you're trying to write, you will churn out page after page after page at 6 a.m. If you try to do that at 2 p.m., you're going to be staring at a blank screen for 45 minutes, and then you might get a paragraph, right? So just keep that 80-20 principle in mind, and you got to think of it to turn everything on its head, including sleep and including, your creativity. Is that making sense so far for everybody? Any questions about that? So one thing I write about in the book also is positioning, right? Positioning is such a giant topic. So you hear me say the word for so many different things, from life management to sleep to self-defense to survival to everything, right? How you position things is going to help you where willpower won't. So for example, okay, if you want to free up time to go exercise in the morning, all right, but in the morning you get up and you're like, well, I got to go all the way downstairs and, you know, get my yoga pants and my shoes. It's far and I kind of stayed up late last night. I'll do it tomorrow, right? You don't have the willpower to do it. All right. And then what will happen is you'll think, oh, I should have went this morning. I would have felt better, but my willpower is just not as good. Oh, and then you'll blame your willpower. So we spend all this time blaming our willpower, when if we just tweak our position a little bit, we can get out of that trap. Your willpower is fine. There's nothing wrong with your willpower. Your willpower, actually, judging by the fact that you're on this call, your willpower is above average, right? So, you know, feel good about that. Yeah, pat yourself on the back for having better willpower than the average person because you made it to this class and nothing else got in your way, right? But what also would have happened is the position, you see? So I helped you get here by positioning the link. I put the link in your email. I put it in your Facebook feed. I tagged you in it, right? And I put a reminder in another tag before that. And then I tagged it, I put it up again right before the class started. I put this link everywhere I could. I positioned it. And what that did was it increased the odds that you would get here, right? And decreasing the need for willpower to get you here. Because if you're only relying on willpower, you'd have to dig through your email. Where was it? I can't remember. Or you'd have to go find it on Facebook. Where was it? I can't remember. Never mind. I'm just going to go watch that Netflix, right? So it's willpower, yes, but it's also positioning, okay? So an example of that is if you want to go run in the morning and you know you need your shoes and you need your yoga pants and you want the shirt you want to wear, okay, you need to put them right beside your bed before you go to sleep. So that way when you wake up in the morning, you will literally trip over that item right away. So then you have no excuse to put it on, right? Just put it on. And then once your clothes are on, well, then you'll feel a little bit more like going, right? I mean, you feel a lot weirder sleeping in if you jumped into your clothes and then went back to bed. It wouldn't feel right, right? You'd feel weird about it. So when you position yourself properly, you eliminate a lot of the friction on the way to getting there. Okay. So now it's the same with social media. Okay. You have to make social media so inconvenient to get to that you are less likely to do it. That would mean deleting the app off your phone. Right. And then, you know, or putting your phone far away from you. Okay. So put it on the other end of the house. So if your house is situated, your bedroom is here. Okay. And then your exercise clothes are here. And then your coffee is here and your notebook is here. And your whatever you're going to do in the morning, if you're going to write, your notebook is here. Then your phone needs to be on the other side of all of those things. So you have to trip over all of those things in order to get to the phone. Okay. Now, sometimes you might fail and you might just jump over all that stuff to get to your phone. But on a bigger scale, most of the time, you're going to make the right decision, not because of willpower, because of good positioning. Okay. So you have to use really good positioning and stop blaming yourself for a lack of willpower because you don't have it. You just need to have better positioning and better systems. And they just take a little bit of thinking and flipping systems around on their head. Okay. Is that a little bit, I hope I haven't gone into like yelling at you guys territory. It's just that it's a simple issue to fix. And when you do, you can like really put yourself ahead. And think about this. If you're trying to increase your value of time relative to either your competitors or other people in the workplace, it's really not that hard to do. It's just these little things like that, right? Because most people are the same. They're spending a lot of time on social media that they could be using for reading to increase their skill, right? Most people don't read a book once cover to cover once they're done high school, right? So self-education, a way to get yourself to be more valuable is not hard to do. It's just something you need to do consistently. Okay, ask me a question because I'm worried that I'm boring you guys and I might be preaching to you too much. So where do you want to go next? Go, Lacey.
Maybe not a question, but it is a statement. Is like I think a lot of people believe that like you're not yelling at. I don't feel like you're yelling at us. It's not a lecture, but it is a good reminder that willpower is like a lie. we can't rely on that, and that we don't suck because we can't do the simple things. It's just because we are relying on willpower and life not getting in the way, right? Everything being lined up perfectly for us. But it's like that's where we have our power, is in the positioning. And like you said, you wrote it, you talk about it all the time. It fits in a lot of situations, but like I certainly appreciate the constant reminder, because it, like, simple, useful, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, just means it's useful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have a question? Do you have a question? Is that a hand raise, or did you just hit that button by accident? Okay. Okay, good job, Steve. Help him hit the button.
I have a question.
Yes.
When all of us become overstressed, anxious, so overwhelmed, not just by our work and jobs, but other things that surround us, like wars, pandemic, COVID, family, loss of a family member, whatever the situation is. There are situations that can cause us all to become so overwhelmed, especially now with what everyone's going through in the world. It's hard to stay focused on what your career is or your business is. And I believe that there must be a better way to organize for each one of us. We must all be able to go back to the way things were. If you can just think back 2 or 3 years ago, when it seemed to be a simpler life, not a simpler life, but an easier way to get by. What would you recommend? How do you get back to that? Declutter, de-stress, to be better manager of your own life, while all this stuff is getting in the way, which is, I think, what that girl was just talking about for me.
Okay, that's a lot. There's a lot to unpack in there. There are different things there. Okay, so because you said like family, COVID, news, war. When you're feeling overwhelmed, first of all, we got to go back and we have to have our you want to have an internal locus of control, which means, like, where's the point of control? Like, what can I control? See, most people have an external locus of control, an external place of control, meaning that nothing is my fault. And that's a good point too. I was going to mention that. Yeah, I was going to mention that, Lacey. There is no going back. There's a bias, right? What do we call it when we're reminiscing? What's that? We're nostalgia. There's nostalgia bias, right? That everything in the past was better, okay? Because we forget all the garbage we had to go through at that time, and we're biased towards only seeing some of the good stuff when we think back and remember, because we have an emotional connection to a lot of things. Like when we say, like, when you listen to old music, or you drive by an old neighborhood, there's that nostalgia, right? We have nostalgia bias when we think it was better. It wasn't necessarily better, right? And there is no going back. We're only going forward, for one. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, most people have an external locus of control, meaning that everything is someone else's fault, okay? And when they do that, they constantly give their power away, because what you're saying is, I have no control over my life. Everything is someone else's fault. If my life is not good right now, it's someone else's fault. It's because someone else didn't give me something that I was entitled to. That's an external locus of control, okay? And if someone wants to do that, like, same thing, the creator be with them. I have no judgment towards that person. I just know, for me, it's a very hard way to live, because it gives away all my control over what I can do when I'm just blaming somebody else, okay? When I look and I have an internal locus of control that says, okay, well, what can I do about that? Okay. Now, there's a lot of levels you can do with this. Okay. Some people might even consider a level of accountability that's too extreme to be toxic. it depends on how you're doing it. Okay. But having an internal locus of control says, okay, well, that's all happening. What can I do about it? If there's nothing I can immediately do about it, if it's not within 3 feet of me that I can grab and do something about it, then I need to block it out. Right? It doesn't concern me. If there's someone that I can help immediately, right, then I will do that. But if I can't, there's really, it can't take that much of my time and focus. And the first thing that I would mention is stop watching the news, right? I wouldn't watch other than watching an occasional 5 minutes. If there's something relative to your industry, then pick up on that and then get out. Okay. But like I was saying before, I think you guys missed that because you came a little bit late. When it comes to Facebook, I was saying that if you're watching this product or service and you're not paying for that product or service, then you are the product or service. So just like on Facebook, when you're on Facebook, you're feeding your intention into this thing and it's gathering information about you and your demographic, and it's useful to them. Okay. Which is fine. It's still a service to someone, just not immediately service to you. When you're watching the news, you're not paying for that product, right? I mean, you're paying whatever for the cable access, but whatever. That's not really where they generate a lot of the money from the advertisements, right? So when you're watching it, you are the product. You're giving it your attention that they need to have to keep functioning. So you're not getting good news. You're getting biased information made with the intent of keeping you watching. So that information has to be as seductive as possible to keep you watching. Right? So you got to think of that is everything, whatever, no matter what your time is worth when you're watching the news. If your time is worth $100 an hour and you just watch the news for an hour, you should cut a check to CNN and give them that check, right? You'd be better served giving them that money and then walking away from the TV. That's the one answer to that, right? As far as like getting caught up in the news cycle. And I can relate to this because I've had this experience over the past 2 years, because we had to get involved in the news cycle because of our business. And once I stopped, life just got really, really, really good again, surprising, because all this stuff that I thought was a problem wasn't a problem, right? Like you see all this stuff, people yelling about this stuff. When I go to the grocery store, people aren't yelling about this stuff. Some people might act a little bit weird. Okay, not a big deal. But if someone doesn't come up to my face directly, I'm not dealing with that. If they're not 3 feet in front of me, I'm not dealing with that. The news is telling me something's a problem that doesn't really even concern me. During this pause now, and that was a good point too, Lori had. We're given a gift of time during this pause. Now that things are open, it feels like we're moving in a quantum speed to get scrambling to do it all. This can feel very overwhelming, and that's why we're here too. That's a good point, right? Things are moving very fast now. They are overwhelming. There's a really good, what was it? No, I'll get off topic on that. I don't have time, sorry. Anyway, I hope that answered your question a little bit, right? But just like that, you got to treat the news just like you would, if you're not ready to give them $100 out of your wallet, then you shouldn't be watching it, right? Other than unless the fact that it's helping you.
Good answer. Thank you very much.
All right, no problem. Okay. We covered positioning. We covered waking up early, going to bed early. We covered 80-20. The ebook, I wanted to mention to you guys, if you guys don't have my book and you wanted it, I don't have your address, so I can't mail you a physical copy, but I was going to put this free book right here. Now, everyone absorbs information differently, some by reading, some by watching, some by listening. So the cool thing about this ebook is I just basically did all three. So if you get the program, it's free to sign up. You just got to create a little account on there. It'll only take you 2 seconds. You'll get the ebook version. You'll also get the audio version. Or if you really want to, you can just watch the video of me reading the book to you too. So all three ways, the book is there. You just got to click on that link, and then you can get the interactive e-version of that book as a thank you for coming. All right. Any other questions you guys have for me? What did we, if I only had 10 minutes I have to run. Okay. Thanks, Holly, for joining us. If you needed anything immediately solved and needed advice on it, fire away right now. Well, if you don't need any immediate, then I'm thinking you got some long-term stuff. So like I said, we have this course at 6 weeks that if you guys are interested in chipping away at this and making this a habit, making it automatic so we can free up time and keep freeing up time and keep making our time more valuable. The course I said is 6 weeks. It's $597. If you guys want to get it in the next hour, I'll offer it to you for $297. So it's half price, but only for the next hour. And I'll throw the link in here. Go ahead, Lacey, ask a question.
So I find like I've noticed that if I don't schedule my time, that the time just like schedules itself around me, even though I have like repositioned and done like made a lot of changes to create more free time and increase my value. I still feel like I don't have time. So is that just a mindset shift, or I feel like there's more maybe homework to this?
Well, there's air around you, right? There's no empty space. Okay. So when you fill your lungs, you breathe in, your lungs fill up. Okay. When you exhale, your lungs don't stay that size, they contract, right? So you're not going to have free time. If there's time, there's going to be a vacuum. Something's going to fill it. So if you don't consciously fill it with what you want to, something is going to come up. All right. Like Lee Maltier said, right there, I got to print it on my desk. It's not about time. It's about choices, right? And it's about priority. If you have free time, it's going to be filled. And if it's not filled by you consciously, it's going to be filled by somebody else. So if you want to do nothing, like on Sundays, I do nothing. And like, I don't have free time on Sunday. I have purposeful nothing that I do, right? That I will write, maybe I will write, or maybe I will cook, right? But it's a purposeful nothing because I'm working consciously throughout the week. I know what I want to get done. And then Sundays is my block off time where, you know, very rarely does the phone get answered unless it's family, right? And that's the thing about family too. When you're with family, you've got to rock family, like not half do family. And Zig Ziglar had a good line about this. This is why people are overwhelmed, is because when they're at work, they're worried that they're not spending enough time with their family. And then so they didn't put their 100% consciousness into their work because they're worried about and stressing about family. And then when they're with the family, they feel a little bit guilty because they didn't get 100% of the work done because they weren't focused there. So whether with their family, they're thinking about work. And whether they're work, thinking about family. It's like, no wonder everyone's always overwhelmed. They're always traveling. They're spending their whole life traveling. They're not in one place, right? Like Yoda said, never your mind on where you are, what you were doing, right? So that's a part of it too, is that you've got to be totally focused on family when you're with family, right? And then you can also justify focusing on that, being deep into that task at work when you're at work. You know, barring some kind of emergency comes up, that's a different story, right? But being present. But I would say, like, schedule your times to do nothing if that's what you want to do, and set up that boundary. So someone says, "Oh, you know, I'm kind of busy. Do you need anything?" Well, do I need to help you? Like, if I was at work right now, making whatever my hourly wage is, $78 an hour, if I was at work doing that, would I step away from work to go and help you, or would I say, "I can't, I'm at work"? Right? Well, when you're off, you got to think of, you're paying yourself $78 to sit there and do nothing. Is it worth it? Well, if you're recharging your batteries, yeah, it is, right? And if you're doing something creative, it's potentially worth more than that. If you're writing and building an audience, that's not $78 an hour work. That's $500 an hour work, right? You just don't see it yet. It's invested long-term. Yeah, go ahead, guys.
Yeah, Rob, I like how you pointed that out. You touched on how, like, skimming the surface, everyone's skimming the surface. Like, people are on their phone, like when they're at work, they're still on Facebook, they're still skimming the surface. They're not in depth. You're not digging in deep and getting all the way in. And when they're with their family, they're still on Facebook. They're still, you know, you're giving your half-assed, you're 75%, you're 60%. Go put your phone down. If you were going to do family time, and that'll take away that anxiety. You know, you'll get fulfilled because you put it all in, and then go to work and put it all in, and then, you know, that anxiety will fall away. It'll fall by the wayside. So you touched on that earlier, and that's a great point. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like when you chuck a rock across the lake and it skips. It's like everyone's always skipping and no one just No one sinks. They're eternally skipping. There's no depth. And if you're writing and creating, you need to have that depth. And if you're trying to write something creatively, if you can have that, you'll get a lot more done. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. I'm going to tackle that in the 6-week program as well, because a couple people said they want to write a book, and I want to help do that. Even if you haven't thought about writing a book before, if you guys want to make content for your audience, which I think everyone should do, there's a key to that will unlock all your creativity, so you're not looking at a blank screen. Anyway, I put that link there. So again, I'll put it in the Facebook group. If you know of anyone that had to leave earlier or couldn't make it or is watching live, I'll put that in the comment section as well. But that link to get the program for half off is only going to be up for an hour. So, go and have that conversation with your spouse and be like, I want to visit the program. And they're like, and work that out. You got an hour to do it, and then jump on that program. And then we'll see you pretty much the same time I think we'll start it next Friday. It'll start right away, but it will get you some homework to do right away. And there's also, with that, I'm going to throw in a course of the morning meditation program. So if you want to do some morning meditation, I did a 6-day program that will help you plan out your mornings and master your mornings. I think, Lacey, you were in that course, right? Remember doing that? And Lori was in that course too. That's right.
Yes,
okay. So I'm going to throw,
that's great.
That was an awesome course. I'll throw that in too. And that's, what do we sell that course for? $397. It's on the website, but we'll throw that in for free as well. Okay. So click that link. And if you guys have any questions at all, put it in the Facebook chat and I will make sure to get to it. Okay. Good. Did you guys have fun? All right. Please do me a favor. If you did enjoy it, go on the Facebook group and just put a quick comment about how you liked it, what you got from it, what your takeaways were from it. So I know what I did well and I know what I have to work on. All right. Thank you guys very much and have a fantastic evening. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Rob.